And welcome back to this week's episode of The Brass and the Truth. Today, we plan on talking about the Inspector General, what that is, what they do, whether they're doing a good job or not, and then how that's something that we should really highlight and focus in on in today's ever-evolving climate. We'll look into in future episodes a lot of the changes to military structure, hirings, firings, and scandals, and how IG should be involved, and whether or not they're doing their job. Redleg, what's IG to you? What's your experience, man?
So IG is known to be the enforcers of Army regulations and the policies. And that does Army, this also goes for the other branches of service. But from the Army side, they always were viewed as individuals that were, I guess, right-hand man of the commander, the post commander. And we're supposed to go there to get assistance from them, and sometimes it was hit or miss. Either it depends on the situation. If it's a serious matter that the military considered, say like sharp, they would take it serious, and they would definitely more than likely will open up an investigation. But if it's say like a matter of your personal issue where like you're under investigation for whatever situation it is, and you're trying to challenge your command team, especially the post commander, you pretty much have no shot, even if you point out the regulations to them. Again, coming from an Army standpoint, they are considered quite corrupt. Now, if you are listening and you serve in the Navy, the Marines, or Air Force, let us know what your all's opinion of them on your all's side. Are they considered corrupt or actually quite helpful? We'll love to hear y'all's opinion on that. But this is how we felt on the Army side.
Yeah, and as always, we encourage people to challenge it if their experiences are different than us. I think when it comes to IG, we expect pretty similar interactions because IG are the hall monitors of the Army. And you can look at that in a good way in that they're monitoring the hall. They're taking care of the morale and whatnot, and trying to keep people in the good graces, or making sure that the commander has a pulse on what's going on. I think they're often referred to as the eyes and the ears of the commander, but sometimes they're also just the bad guys, and they go in and have to break up whatever's going on. So definitely want to hear from you guys.
Yeah, something like you were just saying is my first experience with IG was actually when I was a cadre at Fort Knox. I was serving as an XO for one of the companies at Advanced Camp, and towards the end of the cycle, and they do this with all the companies. Towards the end of the cycle, they'll come and talk to you about what you thought of Advanced Camp and what y'all think could have changed and those other stuff. But the questions that they asked didn't seem so much about Advanced Camp and how it could improve, but were more about the commander and our opinion of the commander and all those other stuff, and about our opinion of cadet command and stuff. We were more focused on what we thought we could do better about improving advanced camp for the next group of cadets for the following year. And you could just read the room that it was a total turnoff when we realized they were looking about how they can improve the opinion of the commander.
Mm-hmm. Well, improve the opinion had it similar where I was doing a sharp investigation. One NCO was physically and verbally sexually harassing another in public spaces, in private, where they intentionally closed the door, and was making this person generally uncomfortable. I mean, to the point that they had a falling out with their wife, and their sergeant major allowed the offending NCO to stay in one of the buildings they worked in, like live there, and he would change out in open spaces where he knew the other NCO would be. Like, just, grade A scumbag at this point. And IG came in and they questioned my report and they questioned whether my recommendation. And I'm just like, guys, your job is to protect the soldiers of the unit by giving the commander the information they need in order to fix problems. You're coming in here and trying to make it harder to do that right now to protect the image of the commander, which doesn't help because if that gets out, now the commander looks like a sleazebag who's trying to wipe stuff under the rug. It obviously wasn't like sexual assault, but it's still a permissible environment that would lead to such things. It's like, I'm not one of the big Me Too movement people, right? I'm not this is one that really burned me up because I was like, here we have clear examples, witness statements, so IG took with all that information and did nothing. So it was frustrating for me. I don't know.
I will say, in my personal experience with my case, is that I was going through the medboard process, and my medboard was signed off and completed by everyone on the medboard side well before I received the adverse action flag. And if you actually read the regulations, is that basically the commander should have approved the medboard even with the process, because I never received an adverse action before the completion of the medboard. It was just still like commander's inquiry or commander's investigation at that point. When it was all completed, that's when they decided to put the adverse action flag. In two occasions, when I went to IG to say, like, look, this is the situation. There is a conflict with the regulations on this. They said, okay, we'll review it and we'll look at your stuff and all this other stuff. They're like, oh, we reviewed it, no issues. They're doing what it says the regulations. It's because you have an adverse action flag. We had to. This is what needs to be done. And I specifically told them, I was like, look, the adverse action flag came after the signature from the physician, the colonel, whoever it is on the medboard side. So that should take precedence. No, it shouldn't. When my process of getting my discharge changed, my attorney has looked at the whole thing as well, and these are individuals that know the UCMJ as well and know the regulations, and they said, hey, this is completely wrong. And they said IG was in the wrong for that, and they said the basic same thing. I mean, this is the issue of IG, and this is why a lot of people say that IG is corrupt.
Yeah, we want to always give a caveat, a asterisk. There are people out there that get into IG for the right reasons. It's just,
and I met one of those who wanted to do the right thing, and I wanted to bet he was probably told not to do anything
right.
because he had a similar situation.
Yeah, it's like not everyone that gets into EO is looking to race shame. Not everyone that gets into Sharp is trying to victim blame or say all
a lot of
men.
it is for a career progression and all that stuff, and it's to help people out and that. I mean, when you actually look at it, IG by paper is a good thing. By practice, is hard, especially when the fact that they are supposed to work directly for the commander. Is if someone is trying to challenge your boss, I mean, and they come to you for assistance, I mean, you really gonna help them challenge your boss?
Well, and I think that's where conflict of interest conversations come in. It's at what level do you need to involve a greater IG? Because the great thing is the Inspector General is wider than just a post-based force. They're not just for the division commander or whatever command level you have at your installation. They do have higher level IG at Army level in order to try and root out some of those larger scandals. Now, I have never been so fortunate as to meet one of these people. I know they exist. The Inspector General, for the purpose and doctrinal bit, is a personal staff officer of the commander, providing the commander with a sounding board for sensitive issues. IG acts as the ears, eyes, and voice and conscience of the commander. The role of the Inspector General is to determine and report on the economy, efficiency, discipline, morale, esprit de corps, readiness, and resources of the command. So I want to shift gears. We talked about investigations. How about, we mentioned a lot on the show, flippals, financial liability, misplacement of gear, fraud, waste, and abuse, which is a big topic in the military right now. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, even with footballs, with even guidance from commanders whenever we have football, they never really talk about getting IG involved, even though that can fall in their lane. Usually they say to go talk to our supply specialist that E7 that you may have a battalion to get some guidance. They don't really ever talk about IG. I honestly, personally, I didn't know anything about the fact that they can get involved in the economy side of things of the military till long after I did some research into it. Finance on the military side, especially on the army side, I always associated with the finance corps. So I honestly didn't know anything about IG on this. When it came to investigations, I always associated them when it came to like toxic leaders or someone violating the regulations or sharpened EO incidents.
Yeah, it's like it's weird because when you think of these, you think of JAG typically, or finance, your command team, but IG gets involved with these when the fraud, waste, and abuse get to a certain level. So this is the one where I don't think a lot of people are aware of their role, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm. So real quick, the regulations, if anyone's interested, for IG is AR 20-1 for the Army, and then on the Marine Corps, there's this MCO 5430.1A with admin chapter 2. I don't have it for the Air Force and the Navy, but the Navy calls theirs NAVISGEN. I believe how you would pronounce it is NAVINSGEN. So basically, Navy Inspector General. But everyone across the board pretty much does the same exact thing.
Yeah, I mean, the role should, in theory, stay similar across the board. When you look at Navy, I think theirs might be a little harder though, just because and this is something we haven't really discussed much on our show yet, but I wonder what it's like being Navy Inspector General when it comes to the boats.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I actually in the future want to take on a whole episode probably about the differences in the Navy and at sea operations. But imagine being responsible for checking in on the morale and esprit de corps on a floating city.
Mm-hmm. I imagine it's very similar to being an ACIS agent on doing boat duty. You're with them for that deployment. But yeah, I'd be very curious. Funny enough, being Army, you don't really, I don't recall people talking too much about the Navy and what being Navy's like. Most of the time you hear about the jokes about the Air Force, and a lot of times you had that Marine guy in your unit and who would talk about like all the great things about the Marine Corps, and who would probably talk about the crazy things with the Navy, but that's about it. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things about the Navy, um, and I would love to have someone who spent a great deal of time in the Navy that can really break things down for us about what it's like to have shore duty and ship duty, and what's the difference, and what is the day-to-day duties and functions of the ship duty.
Right? I mean, like you said, it's just so different. Because with switching over to Air Force, I mean, my fiance hasn't talked about IG once in the 6 months that we've known each other. And I don't think I've ever met an Air Force person who even talks about IG. And I wonder if that's because it's so cush that they don't worry about IG, or if they just know they have so much money that they don't care about the waste.
Wait, I just know your experience could be different, but Campbell, there always seemed to be some type of IG investigation going on. Just about every single unit, every time you turn around, there was an IG investigation going on. It could be just an Army thing. Even part of the reason why I say it's an Army issue is because just talking to some of the other guys who are coming from other duty stations, anytime you talk about IG, they're like, Christ, like, you got told the line and everything. Like, people freaked out whenever IG was being talked about, or if you heard IG was going to show up and do like a little inspection. So you saying that you don't ever hear about IG with the Air Force just tells me that they don't really have issues over there.
Or their issues are well covered.
Yeah, something underneath the rug, or their command teams are able to handle it without IG getting involved. But let's just talk about real quick how does someone become an IG in the military?
So in the Army, it is a not a functional path, but a career path that can be taken. IG does not have a specific MOS to it. So the military occupational specialty is not relevant when it comes to becoming a member of IG. If you have the official path and you're ready to share that, then by all means. But I know that when it comes down to it, it's a lot of hand picking and applying. So much like applying for EO Sharp or even going to Warrant. While Warrant is more of a functional change, you have to be recommended, approved. There's a packet process, and then you go to a school. So it becomes, I believe, an ASI or an additional skill identifier. And you can generally stay within the IG for, I think, the remainder of your career because it becomes more of a service. You can obviously get out. I've had multiple senior NCOs come out and say, I was IG for this long or that long, much like the EO and Sharp people.
Yeah, I think the Army made some changes when they introduced the functional areas and that, but I believe it's still the same as it was before the other branches where it's through appointment is still it's like, being a recruiter. It's when like that one time of the year of your career, like, oh, you can do this or that, and they just the enlisted pick being inspector general, so you get to have a badge in that. But on the officer side, it's through appointment. But that through appointment is kind of similar through. Do you go be an ROTC instructor or whatever? Because the other branches don't have that functional area thing that the Army does, which we can go on a whole different other topic because I know people in the other branches are still quite confused about functional areas, and even members of the military, I mean the Army, don't fully comprehend the functional areas, even though they've been around for several years now.
Yeah, I distinctly remember there being so many captains that were like, I don't know what this is, and I don't know if I should do it.
You can join. You can become a functional area strategist or whatever they have, but somehow you could go back to your old branch. So okay, so I can make this into a career, or I can decide to leave it and go back to my old branch. So, but while I'm doing this functional, I can still use my cross rifles. Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, as we mentioned earlier, they do command surveys. They do control a lot of those command surveys, and anything that seems off, they get involved. Why does this individual or this unit have so many negative things? We should open up an investigation into this. Which actually happened in my unit. That has so many negative comments that IG opened up an investigation on him.
Oh, imagine that. Imagine another commander with an investigation. Speaking of, we are planning on doing an episode about all the commanders that are currently being fired or looked into in the near future. If you have any, questions or concerns or even general statements and want to comment against this episode, we'll go back over time and try to address some of these. We may even do just a Q&A episode.
Yeah, and please feel free to leave comments either on our YouTube channel or on here or anywhere. If you don't feel comfortable commenting publicly, shoot us an email at brasstruth@outlook.com. If you have any stories or anything that you have personal that you just don't want to bring out publicly. This email's there, and we can communicate that way. We can go from there. But yeah, we were talking about some of the different things that they investigate, but we talked about previously about JAG and that, and we will talk eventually about the MPs and CID. But there are some contradictions. So who does EO? Who does Sharp? When does the command team just do EO investigations or Sharp investigations, or when does IG do those investigations? So I'll let you kind of explain when is Sharp investigated by the command team or IG, and some of the other things that they investigate.
Yeah, so with Sharp, there's a quick turnaround from the command team to IG when it goes beyond the inquiry phase. So Sharp seems to it seems to be one of those triggers that gets higher levels involved, and it honestly should for a lot of things. But what you'll see is a lot of commanders will jump immediately to, all right, I need to talk to Jag, get an inquiry done, move forward, this, that, the other, right? So when it's harassment or inappropriate things in the workplace or anything shy of assault, even then, I would say anything shy of violent assault. You'd be like, how does assault not be violent? I'm talking about those ranges of, okay, in the office, this person always touches this female's breasts. And it's like, it's not immediately violent. It's just the kind of in passing touching that could go from harassment to assault. That's where that line is of the commanders doing inquiries, the commanders getting JAG involved, and then IG's coming around when there are so many instances of this, right? So IG's function focuses on morale and esprit de corps and all those things. And where they get involved in Sharp is when there seems to be consistent instances of the harassment and the nonviolent type of assault, and below that are causing lack of confidence in that command structure. And their goal is to then look at, is it the subordinate commander not addressing the issues, not providing adequate training and space and preventative measures, et cetera, et cetera? Is it this person not doing their job, or is it a subculture in the unit that needs to be broken up or addressed? Where IG can get involved in Sharp more immediately and less, and require less front running from the command team with all the inquiries, is if there is a violent encounter, the CG is going to be apprised of any Sharp at all. But specifically with the more violent cases, the CG is going to direct, the commanding general is going to direct IG to look into that unit, because instead of looking for a subculture that is leading to more events, they'll be looking into what led to this violent incident, but also what's going to fall out from this. Because in Red Leg, I don't know if you remember, IG and Sharp put together a infographic that kind of shows how unit cohesion breaks apart when a Sharp incident occurs, because you get people who are like, this person would never do that, or I believe this person, or any variation of sides start to form, and a unit can fall apart because the support for one member or another is not present. So IG comes in and tries to help identify with the subunit command team what needs to change in order to prevent more fallout from a violent sexual assault, and how to keep the unit from falling apart.
Yeah, and just to point out, anyone can go to IG, and I can say, like, for example, in my battery, we had two privates that would have like a little book, and they would write down every little incident they did not like, and they went to IG for all these incidents say they're not like to try and open up an investigation on these things. Uh, One of them happened to be like, oh, this sergeant and this sergeant told me to violate my profile. That caused an investigation to be opened up. Another one that they had that got opened up was an EO. So, as Agro said, Sharp can start at the command team and then eventually go to IG. But if the individual decides not to go to the command team or the command team doesn't catch wind of it, the individual can go straight to IG instead, and IG can just open up the investigation themselves. For example, like this one where they open up an EO investigation. As we mentioned earlier, anytime someone has violated the regulations or policies, they will do an investigation, no matter who it is that's supposed to. But normally that would only happen if they are notified of it. So usually that would take someone and bring it up. Toxic leadership is another big one, but again, that is usually through someone bringing it up. For example, like in the previous episode that we talked about with Colonel Owen Ray, where an individual, an officer, went to IG about toxic leadership in his while he was in command. And as we talk about how they don't always do everything to put a stop to it, or they protect the commanders and not just post commanders, but also the next down commanders, or in the Army example, the brigade commanders. So even though multiple people validated that captain's statement about Colonel Owen Ray, they said they did not see any reason that it was toxic leadership or whatever. So that's an example of some issues of IG. We have multiple people saying, yeah, there's these problems, and they're saying, yeah, people are saying this, but we don't see anything wrong. But I'll digress on that. But they're not considered for investigations. But if you have any questions about regulations and the policies, you can go to them. Meaning, like, if you're not completely clear on the regulation or the policy, um, or if you are a commander and you're wanting to write up your own command policy, but you don't want to contradict the Army policy or the Navy policy, they can advise you on that.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned there, you were talking about, toxic leadership and how that's typically brought up by someone. One thing IG does is inspection, or the Inspector General does surveys, right? So command climate surveys are typically done by the command team via the IG, right? So the command team will get a brief from IG at the beginning of their tenure to the end of their command time. So this, for our listeners that aren't familiar with the military, commanders sit in the command role typically in the Army for 1 to 1.5 years and can get extended to 2, maybe even 2.5. But generally, commander is not commanding a unit for more than 2.5 years. It's highly irregular as far as company command teams. Now, battalion leadership, it gets a little longer, and division and so on and so forth, brigade leadership, those can be longer depending on the needs of the Army, where that officer is in their time, etc. But for the company command team,
that's 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. For the company command team, which is the most immediate to the soldier as far as affecting morale and being that toxic leader, and where you're going to see more complaints just because there's more of them and there's more interaction. They get an IG brief towards the beginning of their command time and towards the end. And that survey is supposed to allow soldiers to anonymously provide feedback on the culture of the unit. And IG will tend to take action from there.
Yeah, so kind of digress on that. If you want to know more exactly like some of the different positions that they have and know more in depth what their responsibilities are, forego military doctrine, I would say, is U.S. Army's AR 6-20-1. That is AR 20-1. that has the most. I understand that's not the Navy or the Marines and the Air Force, but that's the most accessible one. You can get that from Army pubs. I mean, anyone can get access to that, and it goes in detail. But to go over just a couple of examples of incidents that should be looked at by IG, but may or may not be looked by IG. Point out why it should be looked by IG, and I kind of slide in like they may not end up looking at it, even though they should.
Yeah, so this post coming from Recruiter Times has internal chat for a Brigade S3 and seems to cover a request from the command team about DEI-esque events. And so this comes around the time that Hegseth was getting confirmed. And so there was a scramble, I think, here to protect DEI events in order to justify their existence. We've got communication between what seems to be the S3 assistant and another member of the staff talking about, end quote, I just think White Dude Day, aka President's Day, is one. I guess the current administration, maybe we cancel it next year. So, there's some jokes coming in here, but it's also a serious matter of,
it's passive aggressive,
right? And then you get further down in
MLK considered DEI asking for a friend is
right.
Another comment that she made.
But it gets more serious after that, right? So there's jokes back and forth. You can definitely tell people have an issue with either what's going on or the people who are trying to protect it. But at the end, we get this: is MAGA being canceled? That's a cultural club. One person feigning ignorance, but then the other saying, MAGA's a dumpster fire of white males. And so
you have one individual who's trying to keep it professional and is trying, while these two individuals are trying to make side comments in the professional conversation.
Yeah. And clearly one of these individuals is trying to toe the party line by following the CG's intent in this, while the other is trying to get guidance. Because I think the Major Amon here, not trying to dox, the names are available in the post.
Yeah.
Looks like a she. She seems to be trying to poke at the, hey, is this legal? Is this right? Is this ethical with some of the jokes? And it's clear that the other major is kind of like, I don't care, just pony up, do the thing. This is what the CG wants, just do it. And this is kind of person, like, not gonna lie, when people talk about, how the Nazis were and why they were, following orders, half of them were like, we were just following orders. That's the kind of mentality that you have that leads to some of those problems. I'm assuming it's a he with the name Michael. He seems to be not just agreeing with it, or not just going along with it, but supporting it in a way where he's like, not saying, I don't know, or I'm not sure, let me get back to you. He's just saying, I don't know how much more clear I can get. Just do it, And that'll be a problem for sure.
Well, it's also that Captain Molly Walters. Reason why I want to talk about this one and why I say IG should look into it. Now, if IG was to look into this, I don't think anything will happen to Major Amon, even with some of the passive aggressive comments or whatever, because she can easily say she is just being serious and she's actually curious, but that Captain Walters, I think she could be in trouble if IG was to actually investigate with the comments that she's making. She's making political comments in a military professional communication chain, which is not what you're supposed to do. It's one thing if you're just talking like buddies through text, but this obviously is, I'm going to assume it's Microsoft Teams because everyone in the military uses Microsoft Teams now. So this is a business communication going on. Someone at the end is a civilian. I'm going to guarantee they're a veteran, saying like, "Hey, keep this strictly business. I think this political comments. This is not the place to talk about it." So obviously, these two individuals were called out. But again, you can say freedom of speech or whatever, but when you're in the military and you're communicating on military devices and all this other stuff, you cannot be this. You cannot be talking like this. You're told while in uniform, and even if this is talking on something like this, you can say is in uniform. You cannot be talking about politics, and you can't be doing like little backhand slaps against the current administration, no matter who it is, and no matter who, if you agree with them or not.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the posts, which we got, the poster makes it clear that they're not sure what the right answer is. Yeah. So one of the majors points out again, the whole chat is just this not clear thing going on here with guidance put out about what is DI and what's not. That will probably save that major. The other one, probably not. So I think you're right. But it's stuff like this where IG can go in and take those transcripts, those records, and have their own IO, their own investigation, report back to the command team and be like, your brigade is doing this. Or to the division, this brigade has a issue with your guidance on this. And so in some ways, if this got reported at IG, it would be problematic because the CG would then, see this, and if they were the one pushing the policy, could take action against members in that chat that were not going with the commander's guidance. Now, his guidance may have been garbage, but it doesn't matter if IG's going to, for lack of a better way of saying it, smack them down, because that's what he gave, and it was in theory a lawful order.
This is another example of one that we found on just skimming through X is that Ted Macy he said, breaking, see the DoD IG Inspector General response to inquiry in regard the Navy Surgeon General seemingly in violation of 4 U.S. codes. U.S. Code Title 10, 1107A, U.S. Code Title 21, 360 BBB 3, U.S. Code Title 42, 262, U.S. Code Title 42, 247D. The Inspector General saw no concern. They opened and closed the investigation in less than 48 hours, citing an FDA news release from some same day the BLA approval was approved and rescinded. August 23rd, 2021, in an FDA question and answer link, no mention of the law's gross negligence. So this has to do with the COVID vaccines, and part of I was talking about there's some issues with IG and why they are corrupt. And now this is not the Army. This is again Navy Surgeon General's office. The DoD Inspector General looking into the Navy Surgeon General. So this is from the very top. So what was highlighted from the screenshot was news release titled FDA approves first COVID-19 vaccine, dated August 23rd, 2021. October 20, 2021, the FDA releases a question and answer for Comirnaty vaccine. So the COVID-19 vaccine, mRNA. So the reason why IG is supposed to investigate the vaccine is because it's supposed to see, is it lawful to give to soldiers? Since it was not FDA approved at the time, and then eventually became FDA approved. So the thing is, you made a decision so quickly. As this person cited, they violate 4 U.S. codes. Again, issues with the Inspector General is this happens across the board though. This isn't this at the very top. It is from top to bottom how IG will do stuff like this, where it serves the best interests of not just them, but the commander, in this case, who was a Secretary Austin at the time, who basically say we're going to mandate the vaccine. It was basically, okay, it's all good. So what's kind of your sense of this?
So I didn't have a big opinion on IG during this time. I mean, with the FDA approval pending, it was one of those things where, as far as IG is concerned, my take on it was whether or not people were getting the shot and how it affected unit morale more than anything. That was where my experience with IG and that would go. I think it was very separate. Very in Korea, I honestly didn't get to see IG very often, and I think it's because they were focused on 2ID more than they were 8th Army.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came down to people justifying whether it was FDA approved or anything like that, from the bottom up, I did not see that in my line. I just saw JAG and letters for people getting kicked out.
Yeah, and based on this, it seems to have been, as he said, breaking. It was new information, and I don't remember IG ever being involved in it. But this is definitely their lane because, again, for soldiers, sailors, and so on to receive any type of vaccines, it has to be FDA approved. And anyone remembers, before August, it was not FDA approved. What was it, August 20th, 2021, somewhere around there. It became FDA approved, and as soon as it became FDA approved, Secretary Austin immediately made it a mandate that we had to get it.
Mm.
But I think a lot of the issues that people still have with it is, were we getting the vaccines that were stamped with the dates after that August 23rd date? Now, if you look at the person that posted it, Tom Macy, said there was no mention of the laws. And again, they have to follow the law. But I would mention IG, even though they're supposed to get involved in investigations and all those other stuff, they aren't lawyers. None of them are.
Right.
Unless one of them is an officer and they went to law school before they joined the military, they just decided not to become a JAG, which I think should probably be introduced and reforms to IG. If you're going to have them be involved in investigations and all that, maybe they should be JAG individuals, maybe transfer them over or have individuals that have law degrees. I don't know, but this is still also the same problem when you have the command teams appoint some random lieutenant or captain with no law degree. Hey, go and do an investigation on this individual who violate UCMJ. I mean, do you think that that guy is honestly going to do the best possible job, or do you think the guy who has a law degree is going to do the actual proper job?
Right.
But in this case, when we're talking about COVID and what is the law, and this is IG's lane, I don't think I would trust IG to actually abide by the law, even if it's intentional or not intentional.
Well, and I think some people do confuse, like, they're as soon as a law is broken, IG is, supposed to hand over what they have to JAG, right? So their
Mm-hmm.
goal is to ensure that people don't continue breaking the law. IG has that action arm where they give the CG the information and the CG tells that subordinate commander to make the changes. And so when it comes to this level with the Secretary of Defense pushing something out, IG should be, in this sense, giving this information to the president rather than the secretary, because at that point, if the SecDef is the person that is not following up, then it needs to elevate to a level higher. I mean, in the same way that if there is a unlawful continuance in a company or in in a brigade and there's a brigade IG asset, that asset should, in theory, give their information to the division because they need an external and not influenced by the commander source to continue that investigation and take the action. And so, as far as COVID and making any actions on what happened before, IG can now in the post do that because Secretary Austin's not present. And it may not come to anything, but it will at least get you the answers and give the current commands information in how to move forward in improving morale and preventing future problems.
That doesn't mean that there are not still existing issues with IG. There's more than likely still issues out. I mean, without a doubt, there are. And you can just go on social media and see current service members and veterans showing proof of it. I believe that was a JAG individual that was violating some policies, and that's where JAG should intervene, but as it appears he did not. But there does need to be a lot of reforms with IG. And as we mentioned, we will talk about a lot of the firings that have been going on and explain why those are justifiable, because it is becoming controversial politically, and we're going to explain by military law that it is justifiable. This is not giving out political views at all. It is strictly military law. And it's not just that. There's a couple others that are being fired because they lost of trust and confidence. And that is just decision by the branch. And we'll dive a little bit into that as well. Why are some of these branches doing that? But particularly, like, why is the Army? You're not hearing about the Army making some of these firings.
Yet,
But yeah, but even before this year, you still didn't hear about it, but other branches were. And we, coming from it, we definitely have some opinions of that. But do you have any other comments about that?
yeah. So again, as always, guys, we're looking for comments from y'all, your experience, your side of it. I mean, I'd love to have somebody from IG come on and tell us, "Oh, you guys are wrong about this."
Yeah.
We'd love the opportunity to talk to anybody about it and just have that candid discussion.
Yeah, and before we head out, our previous episode we talked about mental health and how a soldier from First to the 187th Fort Campbell had committed suicide, but on around March 30th, another soldier from that battalion had committed suicide. So, speaking of IG, this is maybe that's where IG should probably intervene and figure out what's going on with that unit with having two suicides in 1 month alone. But for all those who are listening to this episode, just check in if you know anyone at their brigade to see how they're doing, because there was another soldier from that brigade, if I understood right, that went AWOL. So there's some trouble things going on with third brigade right now at the.
Yeah, we just need to remind everybody this is not the end. There is more to live for in this world and more people who care about you than you might think. If you're struggling, please reach out. We know how the military can be and how hard those days can be. We've been there. We ask that, if you need help, it's not weak to ask for it. Please reach out. Well, guys, that was our episode of The Brass and the Truth. We hope to see your comments on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. Hit us up on X, and we'd love to hear what you guys want to hear about.